Texas will have one of the most handsomely paid rosters in the country this season. No surprise there. But does that handsomely paid roster put some national championship pressure on Steve Sarkisian and Arch Manning? Welcome into SEC Football Unfiltered, our podcast from the USA Today Network. I'm Blake Toppmeyer alongside John Adams. We're going to get into the Longhorns and their rich roster today. We will also get John's reaction to USA Today's top 25 coach rankings, which 7 SEC coaches appeared in. I voted in those rankings along with some of my USA Today colleagues, and I want to get John to tell me whether we had some SEC coaches overrated, underrated, or spot on. But first, let's start in Texas. A report recently from the Houston Chronicle and its reporter, veteran reporter Kirk Bowles, who's covered Texas for many, many years, is very well sourced when it comes to covering Texas. He reported recently that the Texas roster this season, John, is expected to have a budget of about 35 to 40 million. This includes NIL money plus the expected revenue sharing dollars that could be unlocked in a legal settlement that's still trying to get across the finish line. We don't know where this roster would rank because there's no database of payrolls, but it is widely believed that 35 to 40 million would put Texas at or near the top of the payroll list. So what do you make of this, John? And when you hear this payroll, does this make you believe Texas is the national championship frontrunner?
I can remember when so much was made of Texas A&M's $20 million roster. And they were paying Jimbo Fisher, well, he was paid a lot more than he was worth, obviously, but it was spending all the money you could spend. And as I recall, Texas A&M didn't win a national title.
In fact, they didn't come close to one. Your recollection is right, John.
I thought it was. Yeah, it didn't even win the SEC, didn't win its division. So, yeah, it helps to spend money, as Ohio State proved last year when it brought in Quinshon Judkins at running back from Ole Miss, Caleb Downs, All-American safety from Ohio State, and, of course, it's quarterback Will Howard from Kansas State. But it doesn't ensure you of a national title. So I think Texas fans probably love hearing how much their roster cost, but that's certainly a sign of optimism, but it doesn't guarantee you a national championship. I don't think Texas will even win the SEC this year.
Ooh, you heard it here first. Yeah, that's well put with the reminder of Texas A&M's roster, John. Out of the gates of NIL, not necessarily hard figures. It was kind of rumored around, hinted around what Texas A&M's initial NIL era roster was making. Of course, they had the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country that year, and they flopped, right? And they kept flopping until the point that Jimbo Fisher got fired. So I think, you kind of put it well there. Like, money enhances your chance of success, as it always has in college football. This is not a new phenomenon. I mean, it takes a new form now in revenue sharing and NIL payments, but it's not like the Poppers were winning national championships in college football before. But so it helps your chance of success. It does not guarantee it. However, when you look at what Texas has, headlined by Arch Manning, we know they have a good coach in Steve Sarkisian. Now, he hasn't reached the top of the mountain, but he's been to the playoff semifinals in back-to-back years. And we previously saw Ryan Day kind of get to the doorstep a couple times and couldn't get through, couldn't win the big game. And there was sort of a narrative that started to form about Ryan Day of, oh, he can't win the big one. No, he can. It just took him a little bit longer than maybe some Ohio State fans would like. And there were a few too many losses to Michigan along the way, but he did ultimately win the biggest ones in the college football playoff and got a national championship. So I'm starting to wonder, when you combine the quarterback with the other talent on this Texas roster, I know you like LSU and some others out there, but I mean, I have to believe Texas is at least on the very short list of teams that can win a national championship. And I think their coach and quarterback are points in their favor, even though Steve Sarkisian has not got them across the finish line to this point.
Yeah, the coach and the quarterback. I go back to this past season's playoff game, though, when I thought Steve Sarkisian quarterback decisions costed a chance to upset Ohio State. And that's when he got inside the 20-yard line and kept Quinn Ewers in the game. And instead of putting Arch Manning, a much better runner, I thought Texas needed something extra at that point, didn't get it. Disastrous chain of events, and Ohio State pulled away. Uh, I think that decision, people, if things don't go great for Steve Sarkisian, if he doesn't win a national title, pretty soon people will look back on and say, well, he was playing this seventh round draft pick at quarterback instead of Arch Manning, who's a top 5 pick. I think he will be a top 5 pick in 2026. So that may come back to haunt him. Don't mean to knock Steve Sarkisian too much here, but I just think there's so much that goes into these games, particularly in the playoffs. Uh, Looking back at last season again, the fact that Georgia beat Texas twice, uh, Georgia's roster wasn't as talented. And I don't think it was that extremely close. It was relatively close. But Georgia, with an inferior quarterback and less talent overall, and less money spent on its roster, even then, was able to beat Texas not once but twice. So there're just so many variables in all this. But the fact that you got a good quarterback, which I'm pretty sure Texas does, that certainly enhances your chances.
Yeah. But what do you think about these ballooning payroll figures in college football, John? I mean, you go back to just 1 year ago, and Ohio State. This wasn't sourced information. This wasn't reported information. This was Ohio State's own athletic director just saying out loud, "We have a $20 million roster." There was no anonymous sourcing necessary. The AD said, "We got a $20 million roster here," and now a year later, we're seeing reports of some $35 to $40 million rosters headlined by Texas here. To me, this is not surprising because when you take the NIL money that had already been flowing in to some of these richest programs, and then you add the revenue sharing money that is still not officially approved yet, but is kind of at the 2 yard line and is being included in some of these figures, like we're hearing for Texas, 35 to 40 million. That's assuming that this legal settlement gets punched across the goal line here and unlocks some more cash. So for me, it's not really shocking to see the numbers grow from 20 million last year at the high end to 35 or 40 million this year. I mean, to me, it's like, well, what did you think was going to happen? You were going to unlock revenue sharing and all the NIL money was going to go away. No, I didn't think that was going to happen. I don't have a particular issue with this, John. There are many who do, such as Nick Saban, who makes his skin crawl to see the athletes have, these $35 million rosters and all this transfer freedom. It makes some of the old timers. They want the good old days, and so many times there's a revisionist history of the good old days. But I don't have a problem with it. I'm not a big guardrails type of guy. I mean, maybe on the interstate, I don't want to fall off a cliff, but in life, I think you're kind of responsible for your own guardrails. And I don't know that I need the federal government or anybody else putting guardrails on me. I wonder, you're someone that's got a little more years on you, been around the sport. You remember the many, many years when it was different. Does this bother you, seeing the payroll figures jump from 20 million to 35 million in a year's time?
No, not at all. I mean, we're talking apples and oranges here because now you're talking about part of that. Uh, the well, we've got a shared revenue is going to be a huge part of that. We didn't have that component last year, so you're adding about 15 to $20 million right there,
Mm-hmm.
$20 million a year. So no, it's not surprising. No, it never bothered me. I didn't, you know, it didn't bother me when some schools were paying more under the table than other schools. I do mourning the passing of the old Southwest Conference. I liked that league when it was vibrant and when it got some momentum going and started to buy players uh, indiscreetly, which led to its demise. But yeah, I don't. That's just the way. That's the way of the world. I mean, if somebody wants to spend that much money, Texas isn't the only one that's going to do it. What I mean, Nick Saban. What makes Nick Saban skin crawl is when it's not advantageous for his program to have an edge, and I think that's his concern. I don't think he's lamenting uh, the the downfall of possible downfall of college football. I think he's worried about could Auburn outspend Alabama, and I think there's a good chance he can.
Yeah, speaking of teams that can outspin the others, a story today out in the Baton Rouge Advocate, written by Wilson Alexander, does a fine job covering LSU. Talked about how LSU signed the #1 portal class in the country, and really got into how Brian Kelly and others at LSU really ratcheted up their fundraising to the point where Brian Kelly was meeting face to face with donors, passing the hat, and it paid off. I mean, this is part of the game now. If you don't want to help fundraise, shake a few hands, then coaching college football is not the right business for you. And I can understand maybe why you don't want to do that. But if you don't want to do it, go call plays in the NFL if you're good enough, or do a Chip Kelly at least and say, I'm not going to be the face of a college football program. I'll just be the offensive coordinator. I mean, this is the name of the game now, even for veterans like Brian Kelly. And LSU, the first couple years where Brian Kelly was there, I think anecdotally and based on some hard evidence, I don't think their payroll was where it needed to be. Now, who's to fault at that? I think you can point fingers at a lot of people, but to LSU's credit and to Brian Kelly's credit, they recognized they had a problem. They made some changes within the last 6 to 8 months, and lo and behold, now they have the #1 transfer class in the country. They got guys up and down the roster that I think can help them, but particularly, John, that was a defense last year and the last couple years, quite frankly, that did not look LSU caliber. I mean, you expect LSU's defense to have some dudes out there. They didn't have enough dudes on defense past couple seasons, and I don't want to absolve that from Brian Kelly. He's the coach. He's got to fix that. But I think maybe he has finally fixed it through fundraising, through identifying top talent in the transfer portal, through bringing in both quality and quantity. Like I said, all over the roster, but particularly some defensive upgrades. I know how much you like LSU, John. When I asked you earlier if Texas payroll makes them a national championship frontrunner, you said no. You don't even have them win the SEC. Was that a hint, a little head nod, a little head fake toward LSU in that statement?
Well, this might be shocking to some, but LSU is matching, I think, can match Texas payroll. Uh, Todd Graves is the CEO and he's founder of Cane's Fried Chicken. His net worth is $17.2 billion. He lives there in Baton Rouge, Louisiana guy. He could fund LSU's NIL program by himself. They also have an attorney there, personal injury attorney. You can't drive 100 yards on the interstate going through Baton Rouge without seeing a Gordon McKernan billboard, often with LSU athletes on it as well. LSU spending a lot of money. One thing is, to me, is always a tip off. When a school is doing well in the portal in multiple sports,
Yeah.
not just football, that indicates to me it's got a lot of money to spend. LSU's women's basketball team, led by Kim Mulkey, just got a star player for South Carolina. You don't do that without some cash, and LSU has that through its NIL program. So I think LSU is one of those schools. I don't know how many there are, but this is a game where you need billionaires, not millionaires.
Hmm.
And you can try and cobble together a bunch of millionaires and support your program, but they're going to be competing with a billionaire or two. And so I think the question that programs have to ask themselves and schools do you know where your billionaires are? And how well are you treating them?
And how well do those billionaires like your head coach? I mean,
Yeah.
again,
Oh,
maybe coaches don't like glad handing. Some of them, I think, are fine with it. Others probably detest it and going up and glad handing with these billionaires. But again, if you don't like it, if you can't do it, if that's not a skill you have in your playbook, you're in the wrong business, I think, at this point. I mean, you still need to know
yeah.
some X's and O's. Got to be able to relate to the Jimmies and the Joes, but you got to be able to relate to billionaires too, or at the very least, get them to open up their wallets. And it's not moths flying out; it's dollar bills,
It's
preferably big ones.
I wrote a column a couple of weeks ago on Tennessee's basketball coach Rick Barnes. Tennessee's doing well in the portal, doing well in recruiting. Rick Barnes is out throughout, his career. I think has always been good in working with the most prominent boosters in a program. He's certainly done that at Tennessee. I think it's a skill and it's something they need to work at. And he established those relationships at Tennessee before there was an NIL and before there was a transfer portal. So yeah, you say you got to like the coach. Well, the most prominent boosters like Rick Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
And, it doesn't matter what Joe Fan likes. I think a lot of fans like Rick Barnes at Tennessee. But if you've got those boosters in your corner, it matters more than ever. It's always mattered, but now it's increased dramatically, the value in that. So you look at LSU. Um, I think Brian Kelly can smooth big boosters. I
I think
know
if he
Kim
wants
Mulkey.
to, I don't think he wanted to his first couple years there, but I think he's
No.
seen the light. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know Kim Mulkey can do that. So yeah, you've got to be able to do that. I mean, the best coaches are all about winning, and they gotta figure out real quick what we need to do to win. And once they do that, they need to take steps in that direction. But to just ignore uh, that avenue of success will deter you from a national championship. There's no very unlikely you'll win one without the support of well-heeled boosters. Again, billionaires, not millionaires. You can, I mean, I'm not saying you kick the millionaires out of your office. You're nice to them, but it's the billionaires that you want to bring into the inner sanctum.
Mm. How motivational for your university too? Of we're going to start pumping out some more
Sure.
billionaires so they can help our football program. It's kind of high tides lift all boats, right? If your university starts producing some more billionaires, it might help your football program too. Sounds
Sure.
like a business model that many should aspire to in the higher educational space. But John, though we hear so many complaints about how this lawless model and this model where everybody's just trying to outspend each other, it doesn't create a level playing field, which I mean I laugh at because when in my lifetime has there ever been a level playing field in college football? And maybe it goes longer than my lifetime, John. You could speak to that, but we hear this from Nick Saban. We heard it recently from Tommy Tuberville about how there's no level playing field in college athletics. But I think okay, so we know the idea that there was some good old day in any recent memory where there was a level playing field. We both know that's a farce. But I want to ask you, do you think there are more teams now in a given year? So let's say going into this season, you're coming up with your list of teams that could win a national championship without just sounding completely preposterous. They got at least a 5 to 10% chance of winning the national championship. Do you think your list would be longer now in this era of NIL, transfer portal, no guardrails, athlete freedom, all this stuff we're talking about? Do you think your list would be longer now, or do you think your list of teams that could have won the national championship coming into a season would have been a longer, say, 15 years ago? So that would have been 2010.
Well, I think it could be longer now. Uh, Maybe about the same, but what you do with the playoff when you go to the expanded playoff field, uh, you let in teams that you don't think have any way in the world they can win a national championship. I mean, did anybody think going into the 2024 24 football season think, I could kind of see this national title game matchup, SMU versus Indiana?
No, I don't think anybody thought that. And even when the
Nobody
playoffs
thought that.
started, nobody thought that.
No, no. But my point is, they both made the playoffs. Did we think they could win it, making the playoff? No, we didn't. But you're in the playoffs and things happen. People get hurt, there are bad breaks, and so forth. So to me, in the old era, they had absolutely no shot. No way. Except when SMU was illegally buying players. Then it had a shot. It had the Pony Express and spending a lot of money on its payroll. So I just think, it's in that regard, things can go askew in the playoffs for the favored teams. They really didn't this year. I mean, the first round games were kind of a wipeout, but I just think there's that possibility that if you make the playoffs and things all break your way, maybe you could win one. Where in the past, I didn't think those kind of programs could have ever won a national title.
I'm about to take us off script here, John, but that's fine. As you tell me, it's my podcast. It's really not, but makes me feel good whenever you say this. So we'll do a quick exercise, shall we? If you give me that permission to go off script here.
Sure.
Okay.
Your
All right.
podcast.
So, yeah, my podcast, as you say. We're going to get into these coach rankings here in a moment, but before we do that, I want to do this quick exercise. I'm looking at USA Today's, I guess, one of their too early top 25s. It came out this week. It's a re-rank 1 through 136. No, I'm not going to talk about Team 136, which is probably John's favorite team if I scroll all the way down there and find Kent State. But yeah, I'm going to engage in this exercise. How many teams would have at least a 5% chance of winning the national championship? So let's just look at the top 15 in these rankings, because I've quickly skimmed the teams outside the top 15 and made the executive decision that teams outside the top 15 don't have at least a 5% chance of winning the national championship. So you tell me, John, I'm going to go start at number 1 here and move down the list. A simple yes or no. Do you think they have at least a 5% chance of winning the national championship? Starting with the aforementioned Texas and their $35 to $40 million roster.
Yeah, they better, if they don't have a chance, a better at least a 5% chance of winning the national title and spending $40 million, then Steve Sarkisian has to go.
Okay.
Kick
All
him
right.
out of his office right now. So
All
yeah, of
right.
course.
So we got one.
Yes.
At least one team has a 5% chance. It's Texas. Moving down the list, Clemson feels a little overrated here. I'd have them in my top 10, but in this ranking, they're a number 2. They return Cade Klubnik. They got 2-time national champion Dabo Swinney as their coach, a front runner in the ACC to get back to the playoff. But do they have Clemson, yes or no, at least a 5% chance of winning the national championship?
Yes, they do. I certainly wouldn't install them as a favorite, but I like their quarterback, and Dabo Swinney's won 2 national titles. So there you go.
All right, we
Yeah,
got at
two.
least 2 teams with a 5% chance. Next on the list, John, a team that was in the college football playoff semifinals last year. That is Penn State. They returned their starting quarterback, Drew Aller. They returned their top 2 running backs in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. They made some significant upgrades at wide receiver. And the transfer portal, James Franklin has a career of beating all the teams he's supposed to beat, losing his biggest games, but he's got one of his best rosters ever on the heels of going to the semifinals last year. At least a 5% chance for Penn State to win the national championship.
Again, I wouldn't bet on it, but yeah, 5% certainly.
Okay. How about Georgia next on the list?
Kirby Smart's talent-wise, I didn't think his team had any business being in the playoffs last year. I thought it was Kirby's best coaching job. Georgia has the best coach in college football, winning tradition, come up big in the clutch in a lot of games in recent years. So yeah, I'll certainly like Georgia.
All right, we're 4 for 4. Notre Dame, the reigning national runner-up, number 5 on this list. New quarterback at Notre Dame, probably going to be C.J. Carr. A lot of buzz around him. Does Notre Dame have at least a 5% chance of winning the national championship?
Yeah, definitely. Notre Dame doesn't even have to win a conference to get in the playoffs, so
Yeah.
that's certainly in its favor.
Okay. Quickly handled there. We're 5 for 5. Next on the list, defending champion, Ohio State.
Yeah, you can certainly, now that Ryan Day's won a national title, you can't knock Ohio State on that. It just has to figure out a way to beat Michigan, but it's apparently easier to win a national title than beat Michigan for Ryan Day right now, but certainly Ohio State.
Okay, we're 6 for 6. We're adding them up here. We're starting to get this argument. We're talking about maybe there's more parity, at least at the top of the sport, than there used to be. 6 for 6, and teams that have a 5% chance or greater of winning it. Well, we know the answer to this one, I think, because next on the list is LSU, whom I know you really like this year, John.
Oh, yeah. I mean, LSU, look, LSU won a national title with Les Miles as its head coach and Ed Orgeron as its head coach. So it's certainly capable of winning one with Brian Kelly as its coach.
Yep, and Ed is
Not
one of the.
knocking those guys.
Oh, I know you
Well,
think the
don't
world
you?
of
No.
Ed, especially.
Oh,
Particularly.
definitely.
Yeah, we both miss Ed in college football. Yeah,
Sure.
and you add in these transfer upgrades we're talking about to Garrett Nussmeier back at quarterback. I might be a little higher on Nussmeier than you are historically, John, but any way you slice it, one of the more proven quarterbacks in the SEC. So yeah, I think undeniably LSU would have at least 5% chance. That brings us to team number 8 on this list, which is Oregon, team that was great last year, but then flopped in the playoffs. Dan Lanning keeping that machine humming there. Transfer or starting quarterback change there, going from with Dylan Gabriel exiting, but we know the talent's always high with Dan Lanning in Oregon. So 5% chance or greater with Oregon.
Sure. I think it's worth pointing out here that that 5% chance, that covers a lot of ground. I think that gives you plenty of leeway. If you just said this team really has a 50-50 shot at winning a national title, it would cut down our list. But
Oh,
I
of
think
course. Yeah.
one of the things you pointed out with Oregon, you know, Oregon has a lot of resources. I think now when you look at a program and you know it's well funded, then you give it, I mean, that to me matters more than how many starters it has returning from, say, a nationally ranked team. That you know they're spending a lot of money, they get players in the transfer portal when they need them. So you can anticipate those teams consistently being good. And yeah, Oregon fits that bill.
Next on the list, John, our second ACC team. We already had Clemson. Now we get to Miami, number 9 in this list. Brought in Carson Beck to be starting quarterback. We know Mario Cristobal is really strong as a recruiter, both of high school talent and transfer portal talent, backed with a steady collective. Now, the less said, the better about Mario Cristobal's game day coaching at times. With Carson Beck in tow, do you give Miami at least a 5% chance?
No.
No. Miami, we come to our first team you do not think has at least a 5% chance of winning the national championship. Let's round out the top 10, John. Number 10 is Alabama. New starting quarterback there. Ty Simpson, the front runner. Transfer upgrade at wide receiver, bringing in Isaiah Horton from Miami. Kalen DeBoer says team's better at wide receiver and defensive back. Remains to be seen if Alabama can be better at quarterback on the heels of losing Jalen Milroe, who regressed in his first season with Kalen DeBoer. Now they look to program veteran Ty Simpson to be the front runner there to replace Jalen Milroe. 5% chance or better for Alabama.
No.
No. Whoa. Maybe the first upset here. No. Okay, so the top 8 in these rankings you give 5% or better to. Miami and Alabama, you say no. I'm guessing you think that they're maybe playoff contenders, Miami and Alabama, but not, you wouldn't have them on your national championship contender list.
No.
Yeah.
Alabama, I mean, the draw, I just don't know about Ty Simpson. Maybe he'll be a superstar, but right now I don't know that. The thing that troubles me about Alabama is same thing that's bothered me in the last couple of years. Uh, Not enough playmakers.
Hmm.
I mean, I love Kalen DeBoer's track record for winning, and he got Washington in a national championship game. But that Washington team had a lot of playmakers. This Alabama team, I don't see them. Uh,
Yeah, I agree to an
there's
extent. I
potential.
mean, Ryan Williams was good,
Yeah,
sensational at times last year as a freshman. I think he can be better. I think Isaiah Horton offers them an upgrade at wide receiver. I do agree with DeBoer when he says his wide receivers are going to be better this year. But they're not like 2020 Alabama's wide receivers,
no.
and quite frankly, they're not like Ohio State's wide receivers last year. So yeah, Alabama to me is kind of a fringe national championship team. Would I go 5%? I don't know. Probably right around that number. I think they're a playoff contender, national championship contender. I'm not sure. Let's take these. Let's round it out with these next five all in one chunk, John. I'm not sure if you'll give any of these teams a 5% chance. We got 8 teams so far that you say have a 5% chance. Here's 11 through 15. Tell me if any of these teams have at least a 5% chance of winning the national championship. Illinois is at number 11, bring 18 starters back, including quarterback Luke Altmaier off a team that won 10 games last year. They're at number 11. Number 12, Tennessee, which just lost Nico Iamaleava to UCLA and now has to scramble with a new starting quarterback. Kansas State is 14. Michigan, with its suspended coach, Aaron Moore, is going to be apparently sitting out weeks 3 and 4, which is just a whole other topic we won't get into. How do you get suspended for weeks 3 and 4 before the season's even started, and not suspended for games 1 and 2? But Michigan is 14 with the freshman, ballyhooed freshman Bryce Underwood taking over, presumably at quarterback at Michigan. And then Ole Miss, with their transition at quarterback from Jackson Dart to Austin Simmons, a lot of other changing faces in the guard there at Ole Miss. But Lane Kiffin's been a pretty consistent winner there. He's at 15. So 11 through 15, Illinois, Tennessee, Kansas State, Michigan, or Ole Miss. Any of those teams getting a 5% chance or better from you?
No, I can't see it. But if I had to pick one, it would be Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
A
Just
lot of
because so many
transfers.
transfers, they might
Yeah.
they might hit on all those transfers, and
Yes.
yeah. And I know you liked what you saw from the quarterback Austin Simmons last year, and brief backup opportunities to Jackson Dart.
Yeah, particularly when he came in against Georgia and led Ole Miss on a touchdown drive.
Yeah. Well, we won't do this exercise looking backward to 2010, John, but we got 8 teams there that you give a 5% chance or better of winning the national championship. I would say if we did do this exercise looking back on the 2010 season, probably be about the same. Probably before the season, we were given about 8 teams, some semblance of a hope at a national championship, and everybody else, it's like, thanks for playing, congrats on a bowl game. Now it's thanks for playing. Maybe you can be the next SMU to get in the playoff and get pasted in the first round.
Well, I do think, Blake, that the playoffs make a big difference because if you get in there, crazy things do happen. I'm trying to think of a team through the years. Most times when you've had a national championship in college football, that team was deemed pretty good in preseason. I think the team that always sticks out to me when you do this is Brigham Young in 1984, I think it was, won a national title. Nobody saw Brigham Young winning a national championship, but it went undefeated. A lot of teams lost, and it played in a lesser bowl, but yeah, it won a national title. Certainly, it was considered an aberration, but you just don't get that very often. I just think there's a greater chance of that with a playoff system like we have now.
All right. Well, thanks for indulging me in that detour, John. I know you're kind of a road warrior. You don't mind a 2-lane highway where you can stop off at a Dollar General in a small town, shake some hands, greet some folks. So I'm sure you didn't mind that detour too much.
No, not at all. And I was in a Dollar General recently.
How was it? Get you some snacks, cold cuts, maybe a drink.
Trying to think what I did get there. I think we were staying at a friend's guest house and might have got a
30
loaf
rack of Bush Light.
might have got a loaf of bread.
Oh, okay. less interesting than the 30 rack of Busch Light would have been. I don't know if they sell 30 racks in Dollar General. It might just be 24 packs or 18ers. That's not where I do most of my shopping. But we'll wrap up, John, with this other list I wanted to get into, which was the USA Today top 25 coaches going into the season. This was an exercise I participated in. There was 5 of us who got a ballot. We each ranked 1 through 25, and then those ballots were tabulated and aggregated and spit out the USA Today top 25 list. So these rankings don't necessarily reflect where I had these coaches on my ballot, but I can reveal where I had these SEC coaches on my ballot as compared to USA Today. But mostly, John, I want your just sort of gut reaction of, is this ranking too high, too low, or just right for these SEC coaches? And so on this list, not surprisingly, Kirby Smart was number 1. There were 7 SEC coaches ranked in the top 25. Kirby topped the charts. He's number 1, not only in the SEC, but in the country in these USA Today list. Does that sound about right to you?
I don't see how you could argue on behalf of anybody else.
I don't see how you could either. He was number 1 on my ballot. I'm not sure if he was unanimous or not. I didn't actually ask to see other people's ballots, but I'm guessing Kirby was probably unanimous at number 1. Next from the SEC on the list, John, was Steve Sarkisian at number 4. So the top 3 went Kirby at number 1, Ryan Day at number 2, Dabo Swinney at number 3. Interestingly, those guys are the only 3 active coaches in college football who have won a national championship. Kirby and Dabo have won 2. Ryan Day winning this last one. Nobody else in the sport's won a national championship at this point. And so outside the national champions, then the list rolls on to Steve Sarkisian at number 4. Gut reaction? Does that sound too high, too low, or about right for Sark?
It sounds a little high for me.
Touch high. Okay. Well, then you won't like my ballot. I had Sark number 3 on my ballot. I flipped him and Dabo. Now, if this was Lifetime Achievement Award, of course, Dabo's got to be higher on the list. That's not the way I do my rankings. I'm not really in the business of like lifetime achievement. And so I didn't have any problem putting Sark above Dabo for the year 2025. But okay, your gut reaction is a touch high. I think that's fair enough. We'll skip past some of these non-SEC coaches, John, but just for your edification, James Franklin checked in at number 5. I personally thought that was pretty high. I had James Franklin number 9 on my list. I thought number 5's a little overrated for James Franklin. Dan Lanning of Oregon was 6. Notre Dame's Marcus Freeman was 7. Now, John, the next SEC coach I want to get your reaction on, Kalen DeBoer checked in at number 8. Does that sound about right? A little high, a little low?
About high, maybe a little high because I don't have him that high on when we're doing our SEC list. But I would probably have him ahead of these some of these other coaches. So I guess just a little high.
Tad high. Okay. How about next from the SEC on the list? He was the 4th SEC coach in these rankings. One spot after DeBoer was Lane Kiffin at number 9 in the country. Does that sound about right for Lane? Too high, too low for Kiffin to be ranked number 9?
Well, I'm still looking at my SEC rankings, and I had Brian Kelly ranked ahead of him. But nationally, that's about right.
Okay. Yeah, because you might have him, you might have Kelly ahead of Kiffin, but guys like maybe James Franklin behind Kiffin, so sort of all comes out, and he's still number 9. That makes sense. Brian Kelly was the next coach in these rankings. He was number 10 in these USA Today rankings. Full disclosure, John, I had Brian Kelly 7 on my ballot. I had Kelly 7, so I ranked him higher than these aggregate rankings did. I had DeBoer 8, so I was spot on there. I had Kiffin 10, he was 9, so no major squabbles there. But I did have Kelly a few spots higher. What do you think about Kelly checking in at number 10 here? Too high, too low, about right?
Well, I would have him higher.
Mm-hmm. Would you have him at like So how would you start your list, John? Would you go? I mean, Kirby's number one. You probably got Ryan Day in the mix there somewhere. Maybe Dabo in the mix somewhere. Where does Brian Kelly sort of fall? If you were maybe gut reaction kind of slotting him into your own national rankings.
Well, it depends on how you look at it. I can't help but look at big picture and look at what a coach has done in his career. And Brian Kelly's won everywhere. He had turnarounds at various programs. To me, what sticks out on that list so far, I mean, most of these rankings, I can see where you can make a case for is Marcus Freeman, number 7. I think that's ridiculous.
Even after the national runner-up season, you think that's a little quick to
Yeah.
put him all the way up at number
Yeah,
7?
I think that's one season. I mean, let's see what he does. Give him some more years. I mean, I thought that was way too high. That really stood out to me.
Let
I'm
me
not sold.
let me
I'm
ask
not
you this,
sold
John.
on
If
him.
you
Yeah.
had if you had a donor giving you $100 million to spread to a coach over the course of 10 years, so you could pay either, it's not your money, you're spending someone else's money, as these athletic directors do, and both Brian Kelly and Marcus Freeman want the job. Now, I'm not saying Brian Kelly's going to coach another 10 years, but if he retires, he retires. Point being, who cares? You want to lock up a guy for the next several years. And the money's the same for either. Who would you rather have at LSU starting today, starting tomorrow? Would you take, if you're the AD and you got that money in hand and they both want the job, are you hiring Brian Kelly or Marcus Freeman?
I'd kind of like to have $100 million donor to my column if I could get one of those guys.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I would go with Brian Kelly.
Okay.
I know wouldn't be a popular pick. It's always, what have you done for us lately? Uh, Here's one for you.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think will finish higher next season? Marcus Freeman or Brian Kelly? I'm talking about their teams, but
Yeah,
they go
it's
together.
it's tough, John, because like Notre Dame not playing in a conference, I do think they have in an average season. Sometimes Notre Dame's schedule shakes out to be pretty hard. Sometimes, like last year, it shakes out to be a joke. In the average season, though, I think Notre Dame in this 12-team playoff will enjoy a safer path to the playoff than LSU. But like you, I really like LSU's team this year, and Notre Dame has the quarterback transition there at CJ Carr. Gosh, I think LSU will have the better team. Who has the better chance of making the playoff? Because it's a 12-team playoff, Notre Dame gets to play this independent schedule, and I want to say Notre Dame still has a better chance. I look at their schedule; they're at Miami in week 1, but then they have Texas A&M at home. I mean, they're going to be favored, John, in probably 10 or 11 games on their schedule. So it's not that I think Notre Dame's better than LSU this year. I think LSU's better, but when I look at that schedule, I think, man, if you're setting betting lines today, Notre Dame's probably favored in 11 or 10 of their games.
It's really absurd that Notre Dame just gets to go to the playoff. I mean, that's ridiculous. That it doesn't have to win a conference championship. It's just Notre Dame, so of course you're in. That makes absolutely no sense.
Okay. Well, you heard it here from John Adams. His email is john.adams@knoxnews.com. I'm sure it'll be filling up with Notre Dame fans, John. But
I doubt it.
I doubt it. 2 more SEC coaches I want to get your thoughts on. One I heard a lot of feedback on, John. Actually, I got a phone call from someone whose opinions I respect, perspective I respect, was just flabbergasted that Josh Heupel of Tennessee was all the way down at 17 on this list from USA Today. Now, as I told my disgruntled caller, I had Josh Heupel number 14 on my ballot. So, maybe you still think he should be higher than 14, but I did have him higher than where he ended up in these rankings. But he's number 17 in these USA Today rankings. That makes him the number 6 coach on the SEC list. You and I both had him at number 6 in the SEC. But do you think being number 6 in the SEC and what Josh Heupel's done at Tennessee is good enough to be better than 17? Is he too low? Is he too high? Or is he about right at 17?
I think he probably should be a couple of spots higher. I go along more with what you said. You said 14th, is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, would you have him ahead of Ryan Day? Certainly not. Dabo Sweeney, no. I'm just looking at the people. Franklin, no. Lanning, no. Um, Kelly. Uh, yeah, I would. So I think that's about right, about 14th.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, and from there you're sort of picking nits. I thought he was undervalued in these aggregate rankings with some of my colleagues, whom I respect dearly and think the world of, as you know. But
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
yeah, but I valued Heupel more on my ballot apparently than some of my colleagues did. And the last SEC coach in these rankings, John, is Eli. Don't call him Elia, or do call him Elia. Drinkwitz, depending on whether you're his friend or not. He is at number 24, just making the cut inside the top 25. I know I had Drinkwitz a couple spots higher on my SEC list than you did. But what do you think nationally? What's your gut reaction on Drink at Mizzou? Too high, too low, about right to be number 24 nationally?
Too high.
Yeah. That sort of matches your thinking from where you
Yeah.
had Drink in the SEC.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not knocking the guy. You know, I've always been a fan. But yeah, you're telling me that there aren't 25 coaches in the country better than Eli Drinkowitz? I just can't buy that.
You know,
Come
my
on. Seriously. I mean,
you
really.
can't even get through it with a straight face. Boy,
No, I
we
mean,
need to
how
get
many
Drink on
games?
this podcast, John, to offer a rebuttal. But
Where is Mike Norvell ranked?
he was not in this top 25. Just got
Would you
hammered.
rather have him as your coach or Eli Drinkowitz?
Hmm, might be kind of splitting hairs there. I don't know. I'm a little bit scared by this last 2-10 season from Mike
No,
Norvell.
I
I don't
just
want to be
think that
too.
was
I
an
don't want to be too much
aberration.
of a victim of the moment. I think it might be an aberration too. I wouldn't have a problem with Norvell being in my top 25. He would not be the first guy I would consider that was not. I know you don't have the top 25 in front of you, but he wouldn't be the first guy I would consider having in there and instead of Eli Drinkwitz. The guy I had highest on my ballot, John, who is not ranked in these rankings. So my vote wasn't enough to get this individual in the top 25. I had Dan Mullen, who's now the coach at UNLV, all the way at number 16 in my rankings. I think Mullen did a fantastic job at Mississippi State. Goes to Florida. His Florida tenure did not end well. There's no excusing that, and I won't defend his final season at Florida. And I don't even necessarily think it was wrong for Florida to fire Dan Mullen at the time, although in hindsight, I don't think they made a coaching upgrade by hiring Billy Napier to replace him, but just in a vacuum, maybe the time had come to fire Dan Mullen. But when you look at the totality of his career, winning at a place where it's very hard to win at a high level, he did at Mississippi State, won 10 games there in a season, took him to a bowl game almost every year he was there, made 3 straight New Year's Six bowls at Florida before the wheels fell off in his final season. He was fired. I actually think this transfer portal landscape could be good for Mullen. I think he's a good evaluator. Wasn't always interested in getting in those battles for 5-star prospects, but that's not what he needs to do at UNLV. And so I was very comfortable putting Mullen in my top 25, and maybe that was a touch lofty for me to put him at number 16. But you know who was number 17 on my list, John? Was Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. And I asked myself, would I rather have Dan Mullen coaching my team or Kirk Ferentz? And that took me about 0.2 seconds to decide. I'd rather have Dan Mullen coaching my team. As consistent as Ferentz has been at Iowa, and I don't want to totally make a mockery of that because he has been very consistent there. Still, you give me a choice between Dan Mullen or Kirk Ferentz, I'm taking Dan Mullen any day of the week. It is harder to win at Mississippi State than it is to win at Iowa, I believe, and Mullen did that. So I had him all the way at number 16. He wasn't in these rankings, but I don't know. Maybe I need to quit my job and apply to be Dan Mullen's agent or something.
Well, I'm kind of with you on Dan Mullen, and the knock on Dan Mullen was you nailed it. The 4 and 5-star recruits, he didn't get enough of them at Florida. he recruited well for Mississippi State, but Mississippi State, the expectations in recruiting are lower than they are at Florida. So I thought he recruited okay. He's a good talent evaluator. I predict that UNLV will make the playoff under Dan Mullen. I'm not saying this year. I just think
Right.
eventually it will make the playoff. Um, and the thing about recruiting, to me, now in this era that NIL is going strong, Dan Mullen needs to recruit one person, one of those billionaire donors we've been talking about. It's got to be a billionaire in Las Vegas, doesn't it? Got to be.
Hmm. If he's out there, maybe you could find him, John. You seem to have a
Yeah,
nose for these billionaires. You're
I'll
rattling
go.
off names down there in Louisiana. You know where to
We'll,
find them.
yeah, just go check out. He might be playing the penny slots there in one of those casinos there at the Caesar's Palace.
Ed Ogeron used to say he knew where the bodies were buried in Louisiana. You know where the billionaires are hiding in Louisiana. You're rubbing elbows with them. I know you just got back from Louisiana, John. Apparently, I found out what you were doing down there.
I prefer billionaires to bodies, okay?
Fair enough. And it seems like you preferred my rankings to these aggregate rankings. I'll take that
Yes,
as a column, as a compliment. And well, the ranking season, we still got a ways to go in it. We'll see what rankings we can scare up next week. And if you know any billionaires, send them John's way. Thanks for listening to this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered.